She's I know what she's trying to do, but anyway, I will not say it on
What am I trying to do?
I will not say that on air, It's not Valentine's, it's not her birthday, it's not her wedding anniversary. But
I'm not married, first of all, so I can't have a wedding
I
anniversary.
thought I heard you said that some time ago. Maybe you were just joking, but I take most of what you say very seriously.
I'm married to my work and my studies and
Well,
my
you
children.
did speak about marriage. You didn't say to who, so I just took for granted that you
That
were
I
a
was
married
speaking about a significant other.
married woman. But anyway, you look really nice in your red.
Well, thank you.
Red seems to bring out an extra glow in you, and I don't want you to blush. I'm just telling you as I see.
Well, you can't say these things to a lady and don't expect her to blush.
But why do you have to blush?
Because I'm being complimented. It feels
But then
good.
you don't have to blush. Just say thank you for the
Well,
compliment.
Thank you. I appreciate the blushing is the thank you.
Jesus Christ. Sometimes it's good to let certain things lie where they are and say nothing. My dear people, it's a wonderful Friday morning. We are happy to have you joining us, and we're going to get into some serious discussions and would like you to participate.
Absolutely.
Have your say, give us your views on the subject matter that we will be discussing this morning.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Bola, we're going to get right into it because time seems to always slip away from us as quickly as it started. We want to talk about Prime Minister's speech last night, his address to the nation. And of course, we're going to break it down into bits and pieces of what he has said. We're going to talk about what I really want to talk about, Mr. Bola. We can talk about it, but to be honest, I do believe that it was a very illuminating speech. I did pick up a lot of passion in what he was saying and a lot of passion in what he was explaining. As it relates to the 4%, as it relates to the teachers, as it relates to the protest action. I did also pick up a hint of disappointment as well in his speech. I'm hoping that is because he expected better of, the people in our society that are supposed to be leaders and that are supposed to be guiding our children. So I am assuming that was where the hint of disappointment would come from. I'm just assuming. But it was a very good speech. What are your thoughts on that speech?
Well, thank you for that. I did listen as well with a bit of apprehension because while I wasn't worried about the rumors that came before the speech, people were rumoring, especially about the issue of curfew, and they felt the only reason why the Prime Minister would be addressing the nation at this time is to talk curfew because we have this, extended weekend, the Easter weekend, and it's normally a weekend when there are large gatherings and so. That put aside, I just want to say that as the leader of our country, as the highest ranking political person, the Prime Minister, he has that right to speak to the nation at any given time, to do a national address as it's commonly called. We oftentimes expect that to happen from leaders, prime ministers, presidents when there's some sort of crisis or some impasse or something not going too well or going very well, they would address. So if you have a project or something that is doing very, very well,
right,
you expect to hear from the leader. If you have things that are not going very, very well, you also expect to hear from the leader. So that's the kind of timing people look forward to hear from the leader. That set aside, a prime minister, a leader of any nation, can address the people of the country at any point in time. And I honestly believe it was an opportune time.
Yes,
with mixed flavor. You had the as most people thought he was going to be announcing
a
lockdown because it is Easter, it's a long weekend. It's a weekend where more likely than not people will gather for church activities, or religious activities, I can say, for family get-together, community togetherness, sporting activities. Generally around the Easter weekend, you have all of those things, kite flying functions and so. And being very mindful that we still have a pandemic on our hand, albeit that we are getting better, things are changing and looking more positive. I thought it was a good time to come to speak to the nation, to remind us all that we are not totally out of the woods. We have not conquered COVID-19. We have controlled it, but not conquered it. Mm-hmm. It's still there. We can still be pushed, and very quickly so too. It doesn't take a long time, and it don't take very much. It takes one or two people to contract the virus, to slip through the borders, to break through the crack, and before you know it, it spreads like a wildfire, and you hear hundreds and hundreds of people coming down with the issue. So I thought it was a good time. That's one, with the lengthy weekend in place. Two, there's still that very vexing matter with the public servants, and of course the 4% salary increase that had to be effected from January, an issue that the government has raised and indicated to the unions and the public servants in no uncertain way that, look, we are committed. We know that is a duty that we have to fulfill. It's something that we have signed to. It's an agreement sealed and signed. However, due to the pandemic and the drop significantly so of revenue collection, we are unable to implement at this time, and we're looking for not necessarily a deferral, but yes, a deferral. Sorry, on the time, and what has transpired since then. The fact that some of the public servants, maybe the majority, do agree and are prepared to wait, but you have a percentage of people that feel, oh, well, we want it and we want it now, come what may. We don't care about anything else. He spoke to the fact, which is an issue that we have raised several times on this program, that the government has a responsibility morally and otherwise for all of the citizens. All of the people, all of the citizens. Whether you are a public servant, you are working in the private sector, you are unemployed, you are a single mother, you are a married couple, you are a senior citizen. It doesn't matter, a police officer, doctor or nurse, teacher, whatever profession you hold, the government has a responsibility to see to it that the enabling environment, certain amenities are being provided, that life is comfortable as best as the government can and as far as the government can go, because the government cannot take on the responsibility of saying that we shall now import loads, boatloads or cargo loads of food, so to make sure everybody has food in their house to feed to their heart's content themselves and the rest of the family. No, it's not a responsibility of the government. But the government do have that responsibility to ensure that you don't starve. That if you can't fend for yourself, you don't have a job and there's no means, and as a result of the pandemic in particular, you have been placed in a position where fending on your own and feeding yourself and your family has become overbearing for you. You have no way. It is a responsibility of government to find some kind of solution, or to put you into a program or in a place where at least your survival can be assured. So while it is the government's responsibility to take care of the public servants and to give them what is due to them, and I was happy to hear a Prime Minister in his speech also say, listen, we know, we are obligated. It is a responsibility that we cannot run away from, something we have said time and time again. However, we expect, and you've said that you've heard a hint of disappointment. One of the things I must say though, his whole tone and the calmness in which he read that speech came across to me that he's deeply concerned as to where we are and where we are heading as a people. And maybe if he didn't say it in words, to me, I grasped that from his tone. I thought he was really calm, and he tried to emphasize on the things that were important for us to remember. Remember, he said that Grenada, this country belongs to all of us, and the struggle that we are going through is one that all of us must face with equal responsibility. Well, I should say equitable responsibility, because some people, based on the position that they hold, they may have greater responsibility than others.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that any single one of us, man, woman, or child, senior or junior, student or worker, should feel that I have nothing to do with the present situation that the country is in or the world is in, with the pandemic that we are facing, with the challenging times that looks us square in the face. So honestly, I thought it was a really good speech. There are those of us who may touch on certain areas that we felt he should have spoken about. There are those who may say, well, I didn't hear this or I didn't hear that. Take for granted that you can't hear every single thing, every issue that exists in one speech, or else that speech may have to be 10 hours long. If you are supposed to touch on every single issue and then an issue that appears to be prevalent and should take precedence for me may not be the same issue for you or for any other person or maybe for the government at the time. Not that all issues to them are not important, but some will take precedence over others. Some the Prime Minister may make mention of in more details than others. Some he may make a passing comment on, and we may say, but that's something the man should have elaborated a bit more. So I don't expect every single Grenadian to agree with everything what was said or to agree that everything was said. However, though, I think most objectively thinking, most Grenadians who are of an objective mindset will accept and agree that the Prime Minister came across very mature, very father-like, encouraging us, to make use of the strides to build on the positives that we have gained so far. Absolutely. And do not take for granted that COVID is over and we can now do as we wish, do as we feel. Long weekend, time when people would want to do, especially the young people, understanding that there's a very, very thin line that separates the recovery we have been making from falling back into a deep dark hole due to COVID.
Absolutely, and it was very illuminating, I must say. And as you rightfully said, Mr. Bola, sometimes we go into a situation with preemptive thoughts.
Yes.
So some people listened merely because they were of the belief that we were going to go under another lockdown. Some people listened just to hear what he had to say so that they could rebut. Some people listened to gain understanding from what he has given to us, the information he has given to us, and other reasons. Everybody went in with preemptive reasons. But however, I really do hope that in coming out of that speech, that people learned something, that people grasped certain concept, that people understood, because I think it was very well explained why we are in the place where we are right now, why the teachers are being asked to do the public service. And I keep saying teachers, but it really isn't a teacher thing. It's a public service thing. The public service, meaning those that are not teachers, are probably more quiet, more reluctant, because most of them understand why, especially those working within certain ministries, would have forehand information and first-hand insight on why it is we are in the situation that we are in. But it is more the teachers that have been at the forefront of the protest. However, someone made mention of something yesterday. I was on a bus listening to a conversation, eavesdropping, basically. And two individuals were talking, and one of them said, you see, school go on holiday. Them teacher and them, they don't striking, they don't doing nothing now, because school on holiday. And as school open, they will decide they're going on protest and do with children in school. And that is a very important point, Mr. Bola, and it is something that I wasn't looking at. But now that they brought it up, it's playing on my mind. I mean, if you're in a struggle and you're in a fight, know that the students are not going to be directly affected. If you say that you are not using the students as pawns in your fight for your 4% and so on, I guess now is the time when you.
I want to ask you a question.
Ask me, I'm listening.
What is the purpose of a strike or taking industrial action? Why do people do it? To hurt the employer. Okay, so if I am, I am a farmer, and being presumptuous now, you work with me along with several others. And what I mainly grow and sell, are vegetables on my farm.
Right.
And you believe there is some level of injustice that is meted out to the workforce. and you are leading them in a march against me, so as to cause me to take greater notice of you and to expose what you consider to be your plight as workers. When will be most opportune for you to do it?
Well, when it would hurt you the most.
When it would hurt me the most. And do you honestly think that the teachers going on a protest, a strike at this time, they're on vacation?
No, it wouldn't hurt the government, but what I'm saying is the point that the individual is making is so correct, because I've heard they've been on radio and television saying, oh, well, we don't mean to hurt the children.
Well, they don't mean to, but they know they are hurting the children. They didn't say we know we are not hurting the children here. They say we didn't mean to hurt the children. They know they are hurting the children. And as a result of hurting the children, the hope from them is that it will bring and bear pressure on the parents, whom they think will put more pressure on government, so whatever they're doing is well calculated. They know it's hurting the children. They know it's affecting parents. They know that their actions are hitting home at most of us.
Yeah.
And their hope is that by so doing, by dragging the children into the game plan, that they will get greater support. The issue is, if the government was treating them unfairly and unjustly, I believe more people would have joined in.
Yeah.
But I honestly believe that right-minded thinking Grenadians and individuals can see whether they support the government or not. But I believe most right-thinking people recognizes that the government is not purposefully and wickedly, as some people may think, holding back on the implementation of the 4%.
Yeah.
As the Prime Minister said in his speech last night, this administration has a track record that is unblemished as it relates to making payments to public servants. The history is there, the record is there. I've explained some of it here, and we can go as far back as we wish to. I've just gone back 5, 6, or 7 years. Mm-hmm. But if we go through the annals of history in Grenada as it relates to struggles with governments and trade unions and payments, I'm not saying that there have never been some level of struggle while the NNPs are wrong. Because as an employer, you want to resist as much as you possibly can to allow your wage bill, to run out of control.
Yeah.
The more you can keep your wage bill under control, and you can perform to get more work done, the better it will be for you. But I don't know that this government has in any way attempted to take advantage.
Yep.
And as the Prime Minister said, the track record of this administration is there. So while I understand the conversation that you eavesdropped on the bus, and I do agree from a parental point of view, it will be best if the teachers in particular will protest at this time because the children are on vacation and they will not be hurt that badly. It makes no sense to the teachers in terms of what they consider to be a struggle. By the way, I am not saying all these things to say I am in support of what the teachers are doing at this time or what the public servants are doing at this time.
Yeah.
I'm just being objective in when it is best for them to do what they're doing. Because I honestly feel that we have, that the government has done sufficiently to prove to them that they really cannot at this time meet the demands of paying the 4% or putting the 4% into circulation for them. And that given a little time and constant review by both parties, that they will sooner than later get to the point where payment will be implemented and sustained over the period of time. you know?
Now, I want us to, just because I'm looking at the written version of Prime Minister's speech, and I want to just go over this portion here for discussion purposes. And guys, the lines are already open. The number to call is 440-7377. If you are calling locally, if you're in the diaspora and you want to give us a call, it's 347-329-3101. You can also give us a call on WhatsApp at 440-7377 or send us a message on the live stream or via WhatsApp. That portion of the speech reads, the reality of our current fiscal situation is this. The financial implications of the pandemic caused a revenue shortfall of $96.6 million in 2020. The revenue collection in some months decreased to as much as 50% when compared to the same period in 2019. Although the economy is slowly recovering, revenue collection is still below the projected numbers and far lower than what was generated in 2019, when the agreement with the trade union was signed. Statistics from the Ministry of Finance showed a continued variation in revenue collection. In January and February of this year, government collected $30.1 million less than it did in the same period in 2020. We are optimistic about the continued recovery, but the fact remains that the revenue shortfall considerably affects the money that is available for recurrent expenditure. For the avoidance of doubt, this revenue collected monthly is the source of funds for wages and salaries to public officers. I love this entire piece, Mr. Bola, because it adds so much color to the current situation. It should add color to those who see the situation just black and white, as pay the teachers, pay the public servants, and everything would be fine. This states that $30.1 million less has been collected in revenue for January and February of 2020. Now, mind you, what the public servants have to be paid on a monthly basis, adding to the already high wage bill, is $1.3 million monthly. Now we have collected 30.1. Now people are looking at this thing as,
so you can put it as 15.05 per month, because that 30.1 is for the last 2 months.
For the last 2 months,
right?
So 15.5.
I mean, if we just go, we split it out. 15.05.
0.05.
Because if we say 15.5.
Yeah. It's 15.05.
Yes.
You're correct. 15.05. You know, and it highlights the fact that given that people understand the difference now between recurrent and capital, and persons, as I heard persons say, I read people saying, oh, the Prime Minister is talking down to us as if we are children. It's not that, you know, Mr. Bola. Sometimes you have to break information down to its lowest form. Because we have to remember, when Prime Minister speaks, he's not just speaking to me, who is at a reasonable intellectual level. He's speaking to all of the people of Grenada. Some people may understand it in a different way. Some people may understand it at a higher level. Some people may understand it at a lower level. He has to meet us in the middle.
But how does trying to explain and break down any kind of concept into a way that people can understand it easily, how does that constitute talking down to people?
Well, it depends on who the person is or who is listening at the time.
Prime Minister have to do several versions.
Well, that's what I'm
of
saying.
The speech.
It depends on
and then we will have to say tonight, Prime Minister will be addressing all intellectuals who have a university graduate.
Yep. But
tomorrow night, he will be addressing those who have secondary level education. The following night, those who have had up to a primary level education. And then you go to those who probably have, for whatever reason, not attended school at all. Because if you are trying, as you correctly put it, to get to the middle where your hope is that most people who listen Not who just hear, but who listen. Because I take for granted that a lot of people hear, but they don't listen. Because while a speech is ongoing, whether it's Prime Minister or anyone else, even I see it when they're doing post-cabinet briefing, people are constantly just commenting.
They're not listening, yep.
Every word that comes out of the mouth of the presenter, a comment is sent.
Yep.
Sometimes a person doesn't even complete a sentence, but a particular word is used, and people jump up in arms because of the word. But if you listen the entire sentence or the paragraph, or a portion of the speech, you will recognize what the individual is really referring to and talking about. So I don't get the sense that the Prime Minister is talking on to anyone.
But
I believe what he's doing, or he's attempting to do, is to simplify the issues as much as possible. And I want you to pull back up that particular paragraph you just read. Because as you have said, within the confines of that paragraph, so much is being said in that, even without the spoken word, right? So, first, he says the reality of our current physical situation. And he said, is this? And he went on to explain. So, he's talking about what is current. Because lower down, he said, although the economy is slowly recovering, revenue collections is still below the projected. And the projected meaning the budgeted year.
The budgeted year.
What was budgeted by the government, what the government expected to collect. And that is why we oftentimes say a budget is not dollars and cents. A budget is a representation of figures on paper. That tells you this is what we expect or hope to have, and these are the ways we will spend it. Right? That's why it has, in a budget, you have two sections. You have recurrent and capital. Recurrent is the things you do on a monthly basis. The capital are the things that you hope with the excess you have after you take out all your recurrent spending, because that comes first, your wages and salaries and all the things that you have to do on a monthly basis, your utility bills. You hope to have some excess, which now you will put into capital, which is the side of the budget that acts as the investment side. You're now investing, you're creating new jobs, you're building new infrastructure. So that's the capital side. But it also have in those two areas the collection side and the expenditure side. This is another thing that you have. So outside of having recurrent and capital, you have collection and you have expenditure. So the collection says we are expecting in January month to collect X amount of money, and this is how we will spend it. What will go to recurrent and the excess goes to capital expenditure. But it said there somewhere in that same paragraph, I think, where he said, right, I think I'm seeing it now. Let me see. So it says this, although the economy is slowly recovering, revenue collection is still below the projected numbers and far lower than what was generated in 2019. So there's a comparison. We know 2020 was bad. So it's an abnormal year because we had the pandemic. So very little reference will be made to 2020 and collection, because we already know that we barely collected in 2020. Pandemic, place closed down, businesses was off, aircraft wasn't coming, boats wasn't. But here is Prime Minister saying it is picking up. It is getting better. So 2019 is the reference year. The year before the pandemic, 2021, while we are not out of the pandemic, but we are in a better position. So you're comparing 2021 to 2019. Because if you push in 2020, they would realize there's nothing in 2020. Although January, February in 2020 was good. Because we actually started the close down and everything else in March. As a matter of fact, when you look back at the figures for 2020, the first quarter, January, February, March of 2020, in terms of revenue collection and the projections that was made, it was better than 2019, you know. January, February, March. Collections for those 3 months and the projected growth of the economy was far better than 2019. So in other words, if you had to make a judgment based on the first 3 months of 2020, you can safely say that the country was heading towards economic growth again. Right? For what, the 5th or 6th consecutive year. However, from March, the first quarter going down, You got into closed down pandemic, people getting sick.
Yep.
You had to find money to buy PPPs and all the other things and testing kits and what have you. Everything went down. Revenue, as that paragraph also says, went down in some instances to less than 50%. So after March, the comparison is null and void. So here he's saying that revenue collection is still below the projected number. So whatever they projected to collect in 2021 for the first 2 months of the year, we have as a country collected less than that. And it's far below what was collected in 2019, right? But the other part I want to touch there, when the agreement with the trade unions was signed, statistics from the Ministry of Finance showed a continued variation.
It says although the economy is slowly recovering, revenue collection is still below the projected numbers and far lower than what was generated in 2019 when the agreement was signed.
Right,
so he's
right. Okay, yes, that's the point I wanted to make. That agreement for 3 years increased, 2020, 2021, and 2022, of 4% every year, was signed in 2019, right? And hearing again, for those of us who don't have an understanding of how government and unions normally arrive at what we're going to increase salary by, they don't just pull a number out of a hat. They don't just go and sit down and they write some percentages on different pieces of paper, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, 10%, drop it in a box and tell somebody dip. So whatever comes up, we work with that. No, that's not how it happens. The numbers have to be crunched. So the unions come with their figure in mind. And they generally look at inflation. They look at price of goods and services, what level of increases has happened over the last. And generally, they go back 4 or 5 years. Over the last 5 years, what has happened, what has changed in terms of prices, cost of living, as they say. And I say, look, we need to adjust our members' salary by X amount to keep in line with the rate of inflation, with the increase in prices. The government, on the other hand, or the employer, because it's not only government you negotiate that way with, you do it with private sector individuals as well. The employer, whether you run a hotel, a wholesale business, or what have you, have to know, look at what has my collections been over the period. Because increasing prices don't only affect the final consumer. It's passed on to the final consumer. But if, for example, as is happening now, because of a shortage in oil, well, not so much a shortage, but the prices has increased. And we have seen that many times. Right. The fluctuation of oil prices on the world market, sometimes it goes really high, sometimes very low, for varying reasons. And only in recent times, but, we were talking, I think a day or two ago, about when things happen to the bigger nations, so it affects us. And I remember making the point that former Prime Minister Maurice Bishop said in one of his public speeches that when the United States and Germany and some of these larger first world countries, first world economies, when they sneeze, third world economies like ours catch the cold.
Absolutely.
We had about a week and a half blockage of the Suez Canal. Which is that passage from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, I think it is, where the traffic of these cargo liners and oil tankers pass through, which is a shorter time, great savings on petrol, great savings on time, less time, that makes the connection between the Middle East and Europe, the Western world. And if they doesn't do that, they have to go right around the African continent, what they call the Horn of Africa, which takes, I think, 10 to 12 days more, and a tremendous amount more fuel. So this is like a shortcut. It's something like the Panama Canal, which gives you an opportunity to cut your voyage by half. So goods leaving the Middle Eastern countries and coming into the Western world and leaving the Western world into the Middle East. And you had that mighty ship, which was over 400 meters long. And the width of the Suez Canal is only 300 meters. And that ship was 400 meters long. Now, if you go in lengthway, it's all right. But for some reason, they said it could be a malfunctioning of the engines and other technical problem, along with a heavy gust of wind, pushed it across the canal. So it blocked the entire thing because, and it couldn't go directly across. If you have seen the photos, you would see it's kind of partially.
Yeah, I think that's the narrowest point of the canal as well.
The narrowest point, but the widest point of the canal is 300 meters. And the ship alone is 400 meters long. Yeah. So it's an entire 100 meters longer than the widest point. But, these are all by the way talk. The point I really wanted to make is that for a couple of days, the canal was blocked. They had to dredge it out, dig out sand because you saw the bow was right into the sand on the side and so. Pretty huge ship, 20,000 containers it carry at a time, 20,000 containers. Imagine, let's just imagine that ship landing in Grenada here. Pulling in here and offloading 20,000 containers. Our little PAD will not be alive here.
Of course not.
We may sink because there's no space there. And you're talking about one ship having 20,000 40-foot containers fitted on it.
Yeah.
It's a sight to behold one. But the point I want to make and to show the effect is that for these couple of days, almost 8 or 9 days that it got stuck before they were able to free it. You had over 350 vessels backed up that are supposed to pass through that canal. Some 55 or so passes through every day, they said, right? So they couldn't pass. Those coming out of the Middle East, those going into the Middle East with goods and services, all kind of thing trading, whether it's oil. In fact, that particular ship that got the Ever Given, came out of China with those 20,000 containers with goods going into Europe, and nothing could pass. What is interesting about that is that they said on a daily basis, there was some $9 billion lost in trade.
In trade.
9 billion per day. Every day that ship remained blocking and goods could not go forward and backward. The business sector between the Western Wall and the Eastern Bloc was losing at least $9 billion US dollars, 400 million per hour.
Yeah.
How does that affect Little Grenada? We are so far away from the Suez Canal. You know how it affects us? As a result, it is pushing already the price of petrol up because so many oil tankers that comes daily from the Middle East, because that's where most of the oil, with the exception of Venezuela, now Guyana is doing some, the US have some oil, but it's mainly for their own use, for domestic use, they don't ship out. So in the region we have Guyana, we have Venezuela. Venezuela has all of its issues and problems. Guyana has a lot of oil reserves, but we also know that it is, so much sulfur and so in it that if they go to mine all of it, it takes so long and it's so expensive to get it cleaned up for use that it would be too expensive for us. So outside of that, all of our supplies comes all the way from the Middle East. So being blocked up only for a couple of days. There were some countries that they were already rationing petrol. That will eventually cause the cost of shipping to go up because these ships burn fuel that will cost more. And it will indirectly affect us here. Because how do you arrive at the final selling price of any product that you import? It is the cost of the product at the point of origin. It is the cost of shipping the product from where it originates to where you need it, and all other transportation costs, inland transportation. So, for example, if containers have to be pulled from a certain part of that country to get to the port, there's a cost. It doesn't go free. That is added on. The insurance onto that and whatever duties and taxes. So sometimes people say, the price is too high because government charging too much duties and taxes. That's not the only thing. It's not the only component of the cost. So as every other component goes up, the final selling price goes up and the consumer is who pays it. So we are affected whether we like it or not. So the point I'm making, when a negotiation is happening, the unions take all those into consideration. But the government on the other hand, or the employer on the other hand, has to take into account all of my expenditure, how well my goods are selling, how well the business is doing, what do I collect, and where can I put, as you say, where can I meet them in the middle?
Yeah.
So sometimes when the unions come and they start the negotiations, they just come with some kind of ridiculous increase, like 15% a year and all kind of thing, 20%, and you ask them, well, what is your basis? Let's go into the figures. And after they go backward and forward for several weeks and sometimes months and looking at the figures and bringing in their analysts and the accountants and economists and so, and then the projected growth and rate of increase of goods and services down the line. So they look at the past 5 years or so, or as far back as they want to go, but they also have to look at the projections going forward.
Yeah.
And it was as a result of the projections of going forward, government felt that based on our collection in 2018, 2019, 2017, and the rate of growth of the economy, it would be okay. Not easy, but okay. We can meet a 4% increase in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Hence, the Prime Minister is saying in his speech that when negotiations was concluded with the unions in 2019 and we signed on, it was because we had growth. It was because we expected a continuation of that growth in 2020, 2021, and 2022. It was because we projected forward, seeing us doing better year after year. But COVID came, 2020. What did it do? Curtail all of the growth. And you know what? Instead, and somewhere in the speech it said, earlier up on, where there was a 12.2% decline in economic growth for 2020. So whereas you expected and you projected at the time of signing to have a
It's right here.
5% growth. Where is it there in that paragraph? So he said, sisters and brothers, what must be pointed out as well, so he spoke about other things before, is that the projection for growth in 2021 was 6%.
Is 6%.
That is 2021, right? So is 6%. But this will not take us back to pre-COVID levels of real growth. And we spoke about that here too. In 2020, the country experienced negative growth of 12.2%.
Yeah.
The reality is, it will take 2 to 3 years for our GDP to recover from the significant level of output loss experienced in 2020. Right?
We have a call on the line, Mr. Bola.
Okay, so let me hold my thought and let's take.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Hi, we're good. How are you?
Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Duncan. So far, so good. Yeah. While the Honorable Prime Minister was speaking last night, I was watching it on my phone, and the kind of comments that were coming in from people, it's like, the questions are, what do these people want? Where they are in life? And if they're in a position, what would they do? You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. The questions are right. It's like, how do you, it's possible for you to please everybody, okay? But at least, I'm not saying put that crown on the Prime Minister's head. I'm not making that kind of statement. But at least show some form of respect. Because where are you compared to him in life? In order for you to make certain disgusting comments. That is my question.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you for that comment.
That's what I'm saying. People must be careful on how you're speaking. In any way, a lot of people, they were just making some really disgusting comments.
Ridiculous, yes.
Yeah.
And it is not nice. We must be human at all the time. I always say, put the racism and the colors and the religion and everything. We must be human. God make us human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you must always put yourself in other people's shoes before you make comments. Because you yourself, if you know that, he has made that, the Honorable Prime Minister has made certain leverage in life, you don't know where you are today, and you don't know if you're going to make that stand. So if you are given that chance to make a decision, what would be how would you make that decision?
Yeah. How would you handle the
Nobody
situation?
is perfect. Nobody is perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, all right.
We appreciate that comment from you, sir. And just to reiterate something we said earlier on, most of us hear, but we don't listen. I think that's what the caller is emphasizing. Because there you have the Prime Minister speaking and reading out And people are just commenting verbatim as soon as he says one thing. He didn't complete a sentence yet. They put up all kind of ridiculous. So sometimes I don't even read those messages because they just show you off track.
Yeah. I just swipe right sometimes. I can't deal with it.
Because we don't listen to understand.
All right. We have a call on the line. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sweetheart.
Good morning, Miss Jacob.
Darling Sister Duncan, who are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm fine. And good morning to my handsome, beautiful, sexy brother there by your side.
Miss Jacob, I'm very well, and thank you for all the descriptive adjectives. But you're making all them other girls get vexed, you know.
What are their business?
Okay, all right. It's all your business if all your vex.
Vex with their face.
Yes, all your vex with all your face. That's all your business.
That's right.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine this morning. I'm fine.
Yes. Did you listen to the speech last night?
I am in a good spirit because I hear my handsome, beautiful, sexy Prime Minister last night. Oh my God. If I only had a plane,
yes,
I'd take he and mommy
yes.
and move from Grenada.
No. We can't allow the Prime Minister to leave Grenada now, Miss Jacob. There's going to be too much suffering. You see? While we have a few detractors that try to make him out as though he is not human and that he doesn't mean well for Grenada. We have seen with our own eyes. We have experienced for ourselves that when he is not at the helm, when the Honorable Prime Minister is not the leader of the country, the kind of problems that exist in this country.
You understand?
We haven't forgotten, you know.
No, I don't forget.
Right.
Well, it's me that don't forget. It's me that do bad things.
Yes.
And especially the senior citizens.
Yes.
They're giving the senior citizens and the first of another month.
Okay.
Those workers and the fifth of the other month, you know.
Yes.
We don't get in money month end. No, we get in it before month end.
A whole week before the month end, so you could do what you had to do, you know, and thing before the place get too crowded.
Yes.
Yes.
It's taking us out of the way.
Yes.
That's right, I know. What you doing there now? You bringing it at we home.
Yes, they're bringing it for you home. You don't even have to get up and go nowhere. Respect for senior
Just
citizens.
get up and go in the veranda.
Yes.
And they bring it right there. And then those other those that is not seniors, they're giving them by the
by the post office, the revenue
That's
office.
Right.
Yes, we know about it.
Quite and give them us that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Who other prime minister? None. I don't see none.
And you even have the government implementing this thing with what they call them now, the caregivers.
Yes.
Where they send people come if you not so well, you're living alone. They come and help you 2-3 times a week.
Yes.
They will come and plait your hair for you. They will make sure you have a bath, help you wash your clothes, clean your place. And you have some people saying, well, forget all that and give us 4%. Forget these people and them. You know, I heard a gentleman called one of the radio programs saying, these old people and them live their life already. It's time for us to leave now. I mean, come on. Is that the kind of way we want to treat our seniors? The people who have led the way and prepared a foundation for us? Huh?
And I want to tell you, I hear a lady this morning on another radio station. I won't say which radio station. The lady say, why they don't do it? Why they do what? Let the teachers and them put him down on his neck and ting on his neck. Press him down until he break his neck. On the radio station, the whole world hear that this morning. My ID get vexed.
No, don't get vexed. Just pray for them.
Somebody call me and say, Miss Jacob, don't study that woman that get vexed. Please.
Pray for her. Pray for her. Pray that God will touch her heart for she to think different.
For her. I said, my darling sister, I love you.
Yes.
You're quite nice. And my sister, today's Holy Week.
Yes, Holy Thursday.
They want to do the Honorable Dr. Kit Mitchell just as what they do Christ You forget when in they send Judas, they tell Judas go and get Christ, get him. They get Christ. Not to say they didn't get him, you know. The fella get him. And they give him 30 pieces of silver to go and get Christ.
Yes.
And when they get him now, when he get Christ now, and he bring it, give them now, he say, well, I don't want all your money again. They say, no, they don't want no money because they get what they want.
What they want, yes.
This Christ they want.
Yeah.
And what do you think he do? He just throw the money, give them, and he go ahead and himself. They better be, they better watch this.
They better watch out, yeah?
Yes, they better watch out.
We understand. So we're discussing the speech, you know, certain things in the speech, what Prime Minister said.
That's right.
You know, what
so
it
you
means.
all have a blessed and a wonderful Easter.
You as
and
well.
what? Asking you, Brother Bula, can you go and fly a kite with me and Miss Duncan and see which one goes stop faster?
All right, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to make a plan with two of you.
Yes.
And we're going to do a thing, eh?
Okay, baby.
Take good care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Happy Easter to you too.
Happy Easter to you, sweetheart.
All right.
God bless you all and I love you all.
Thank you much.
All
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care. Yes. Yes, so as we were saying, Ms. Duncan, the government has to manage what it does. So the government felt in 2019, looking back at what was done 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015, and looking forward, what you would conclude in 2019, where you would be in 2020, 21, 22. They consciously signed on to an agreement with the public servants that they will pay 4% salary increase in 2020, 4% in 2021, 4% in 2022. And by coming down the latter part of this year, 2021 into 2022, they will go back around the negotiating table, again, looking at where we are and the projections going forward and see what, who knows, maybe for 2023, 2024, 2025, they might have said 5%, 3%, 2%. It all depends on where the country was and where it was heading based on the economic focus. So a lot of thinking and planning goes into that. And as Prime Minister correctly said, when they signed on in 2019, the economy had growth of 5-point-something%. The economy was projected to grow by 6% in 2020. That is why January 2020, 4% was implemented. And with a 6% growth in 2020, you would have gotten 4% again January 2021. But rather than a 6% growth in 2020, due to the pandemic, what you had, a 12.2% decline. So you didn't go forward, you know. You went backward. Not by 5, not by 6, but by 12.2. So there is a projected growth in 2021 of 6%. Now, even if you achieve that, you still will be in the red. You will still be negative. Because remember, in 2020, you went back by 12.2%. So 6% growth, if that is achieved by the end of 2021, still means that for 2022, you have a 6.2% negative growth to offset before you can start having positive growth again. And hence, in this speech, in that paragraph that I said to you, that I believe is the most important paragraph, with a lot being said, hence, Prime Minister said, it will take, even though we are guardedly optimistic that there will be a 6% growth in 2021, it will take 2 to 3 years to offset that negative setback and then get into a positive.
Yeah.
And that is the basis on which the government approached the unions, the trade unions, first and foremost to say, can we forego that 4% increase for 2021? That was the first approach, you know, because they recognized that we had negative growth, as they call it in economics. That we went back 12%. There's a call online?
There's a call on the line.
Okay, so let's
Hello, good morning.
Mr. Bibola, Ms. Duncan, sorry to come back, but
Yes.
I don't know. There was a little video last week, I think, people were circulating on WhatsApp, right, where a little kid was using obscene language and, regarding the payment of teachers and this and that. Okay, we find it, little kid, what he may have said is, could but there was a lot of obscene language. What if that would have been your child? Would you have liked to see that video circulated? Somebody had it somewhere, and he was like climbing the tree, and they filmed this video, and it wasn't appropriate. So for a kid as an adult, would you have circulated that video?
No, I didn't even see it, but it tells you how low we can go sometimes.
Definitely, it's the
thinking.
mind. If you can highlight a video of a little kid of that stage, what are you teaching the younger generation? What are you telling that little kid? Yeah? So people, you need to grow up. When you do this discussing stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's a concern for the life ahead. To be honest with you, the late Mr. I can't remember the guy name who redo the Constitution for our nation. I can't remember his name. If you can help me recall it.
No, I don't recall his name too, but let's hear the point.
I haven't met that person, and at times we were talking. I was talking to him.
Yes.
Regarding the future of this nation, regarding politics and leadership, and he was mentioning that he cannot time limit a leadership time that you will have, because there's not only in Grenada but throughout the Caribbean, we are failing to develop leaders. Yeah.
I do agree. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say failing to develop leaders that has the kind of passion and foresight for overall growth.
Everything I'm trying to make it a summary here is like, today how Dr. Mitchell is making that decision. It will not be good at this present time, but we have to look at the future. Yes, the future. So in all, if people could take this little video here with a lot of obscenity for our kids, and this is what you're talking future?
Yes.
At this present time, the decision what doctors is making is not good. Let me say that, okay? But down the road, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, we don't know the present situation of the Treasury or the Inland Revenue Department. We just talking, we want your money. You want your money, but there's no machine to print the money and give it to you. Like that.
I get that.
We must think beyond. Yeah?
Yes.
And some people narrow-minded in saying and doing a lot of things. You need to come out and stop let people think for you.
Well, my brother, simply put, and quoted straight from the Bible. The Bible has said, where the leaders lack vision, the people will perish. Yes? And all it's simply saying is, if we cannot look down the road and do a reasonable enough assessment of where we will be, what we can do and what we cannot do, we will do all kind of foolish things and then perish later on. Simply that. We have to, because if we, as my concern is, if we don't behave like this, there is no future for the younger ones that have to come. So we have to know. We have to set the standard now. And if you don't, then forget it later on. You're going to have a kind of atmosphere throughout your history of life. Yes.
No, it's
and that's what some of our people looking for.
Yeah, that is why you just want to have a party time. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's not about that. Education is key aspect of life. Common sense is not in the book. So we have to try to observe those things. Yeah?
Yes.
In some time to come, we will have politicians, but we're not our leaders.
I agree.
Yeah?
I agree.
Yeah, I'm telling you, at times people feel people who are stop making decisions is not, but you don't know how the decision is being made at what level. But you only interested in what you want in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that person who is making decisions has to make decisions on behalf of 100,000 or 200,000 people. Yeah.
So correct.
So we have to be patient.
Yeah. All right.
Well, again, thank you for your comments. We do appreciate.
Okay, thank you.
You're right. Great.
Mr. Bola, there's a phrase that comes to mind in when the caller was speaking about our young people. It's emotional temperament.
Yes.
Our young people do not have the emotional temperament to be leaders. or to be effective, not just leaders, but effective
Yeah,
leaders.
yeah.
Because they let their emotions, how they
Take control.
feel about certain situations,
At any given time.
control their response to it. We have another caller on the line. Hello, good morning.
Wow,
We seem to lost the caller, but he'll call back. Yeah, and I noticed that especially last night after the Prime Minister's speech, and during as well, when you look at the comments that were going on, when you look at, there was an after program with two young people that were supposedly giving their view on the speech. And while I did not look at the entire thing, because really and truly, sometimes your mental health is very important. And it's not all of the time that you can listen to this.
Can't consume all of this toxic material.
Yes, it was forceful, aggressive negativity in its rawest form, and I didn't really and truly I did not expect anything else, because the individuals have very, very clearly stated previously that they do not, and will never support this administration, nor do they like the Prime Minister, and that in itself clouds any objective judgment that they can give on a situation. We have a call on the line. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bowler. Good morning, Miss Duncan.
Very good morning to you, my dear. How are you?
How are you guys doing?
Well, we're trying to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, one topic at a time.
That's all we could do.
Yes, but you sound really healthy and strong. Good to hear you.
I think the Prime Minister gave a good account. His speech was very informative.
Yes.
And as we know, there are people, and we can't change that. No matter what you do, there would always be opposition. And some people, they already have a mindset that the Prime Minister is going to make his speech, and they're not going to listen, but this is what they have to say, and these are the comments that they are going to make. Mr. Bola, if you don't have respect for yourself, you cannot exhibit respect for other people.
Well said.
And that is what is happening. These people do not have respect for themselves. And the people that are leading them do not have any respect either. Because the way that they would refer to the Prime Minister, I would not blame the young people, because the young people support them. Well, not all of them. Some of the young people that support them, I would not blame them for their behavior, because this is the people, that is what their leaders exhibit. But I think that the Prime Minister gave a good account in his speech last night. And what I am saying is that some, not all of the teachers and not all of the public sector workers, but some of them are very selfish. Because if you're going to tell me to send home workers just so I could get an extra 4%, yes, there is a signed agreement, and yes, they deserve it. But things happen in life that we have no control over. And sometimes we have to accept the reality of the things that happen that we have no control over. The Prime Minister did not put COVID on us. The Prime Minister, as a matter of fact, I applaud the government that in spite of the revenue lost, they can still upkeep the workforce. They can still do all of these things in the country that one of the union leaders said that the government, they're going about the business like nothing happened. But do they want the government to go at a standstill, lock everything down, pay the 4% and lock everything down, close down the country, do not do anything in the country? I mean, when I hear a former Prime Minister of this country say that he was given an option to pay the 4% or send home the airport workers, he would pay the 4%. My heart sank. And you know why my heart sank? Because the 4%, yes, while the people deserve it, but these people are getting a monthly salary. And you would send home people that have children, that have family, that have mortgages, that have to eat and drink, just to give other people extra that they deserve. I'm not saying that they didn't deserve it, you know. And the teachers and the public sector workers that are fighting for that, they should look at that. The government is trying to help other people. And they should commend the government, and they should say, okay, let us hold back, because the government is doing the right thing. They are trying to help. When you send home the Imanis, they are nursery trainees, they are nurse trainees that are Imanis, they are police trainees that are Imanis, they are teacher trainees that are Imanis. Some of these people have children, they have families. When you send them home, these people are going to go on the breadline just because you want more. So I don't care about anybody else, but just give me more. Give me more. Close down the country if you have to, but give me more. But guess what? When I give you more and I have to close down the country, then all of us go down.
Yep.
All of us sink.
Yep.
So they don't care if we sink or we float, if the country sink or it float. Just give me more. And the hypocrisy in the union, I hear union leaders say, it's not about the 4%, but it's about honoring a signed document. But the unions have a signed document saying that that when they call the workers out to strike, they have to pay the workers. Why are the unions misleading and deceiving the workers of this country? I think the workers need to take an audit of the union books and see where the money that they're paying every month is going, and not just on the government back. Because the unions, and I hear that union leader said they're more, and he's talking about the Prime Minister arrogance, and I hear him say that there are more industrial actions to come. Who is arrogant? Because yes, they have the power and they could do it. And I am sorry for our people if we continue to be led by these union leaders, because they are deceiving you and they're not telling you the truth. Let the union leader tell you who's supposed to pay you when they call you out from your workplace. Mr. Bola, Ms. Duncan, enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, you have a fantastic one, and I do want to wish you a happy Easter, my dear. Take good care, and thank you again for your comments.
Yeah, and very good comments. They were very important questions that need to be asked as well. Very important questions. We have some comments on the live that I want to read, but we do have a call coming in as well. So let's take the call first. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys doing this morning?
Hi, good morning.
Very well, thank you.
I want to make a point, but I don't want the greater majority of persons out there to get me wrong, right? Because I believe the teachers deserve their 4%. But Mr. Bola and Ms. Duncan, I want you guys to do something for me. If it's not later on in the program or tomorrow, well, maybe Tuesday, God willing, I want you all to maybe an average of a public servant / teacher salary, and see what is 4% of that, because I did that, and what the figure I got, I think, although they deserve it, it was a signed document, they could wait. You understand? Because listen, some people didn't work since this pandemic started. Probably they have even lost their jobs since before the pandemic started, and they haven't worked because all places was closed off. And on the subject of teachers, no, some teachers, they had striked, and the employers, which was the government of Grenada, had docked their salaries, and they still want their monies. But listen, as I said, I don't want people to get me wrong. But remember how long some teachers did not work during the pandemic. I could be wrong, but they didn't work for months, and they were paid fully. There was no problem in them getting their money for not working for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 months. Thereabout, right?
Yes.
And my last issue I have okay, I hear a lot of people talking about government this and that, and they have money to do other projects why they didn't pay the teachers. Now, listen, if I have a home, Mr. Bola, and you know I need an inside bathroom and toilet, but you bring me money and you tell me that money that you're giving me is to paint my house, I cannot do anything else with that money you're giving me but to paint my house because you see me have another need. But if I take that money you give me, although I need an inside bathroom and toilet, but I take it and I do something else, then how would I get more help from you? Thanks very much.
Understood. There's just one little correction I want to make to all that you have said, which is very, very important. Government never docked money from the teachers and others. They did not work, and so they was not paid. And that is part of the labor law, saying that no employer could force any employee to work. So you have the right to withhold your labor anytime you wish. But that same piece of law says you cannot force the employer to pay you when you did not work.
But then, even if okay, right, they didn't work, so they didn't get paid. But what I'm saying is, they didn't work during the pandemic for
right.
much months, and they were paid.
And they were paid, and that's a different situation because
They weren't withholding.
it wasn't them withholding the labor. It was as a result of a pandemic they could not go to work.
But what I'm saying is some of them might vex with me, but what I say, okay, the tables have turned, pandemic, we home.
Yes.
Okay, government, we know you're in a struggle now. Withhold $100 from our pay.
No, you won't find that. No, but that would be a good thing, but we would say Jesus is walking on earth again when that go happen. Nobody ain't saying that now, not at all.
Later.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, you wanted to read some of the
comments on
the comments, yes. And
first
there are
one
very
goes,
many, though.
Yes, there are. I do not believe now is the right time for demonstration for wages and so forth. Now is a time to find reasons to be thankful. In so saying, and in my humblest opinion, I have grown tired of hearing government making excuses to not increase wages. And as Mr. Bola said, keeping wages down makes it easy for government. Why should we be making it easier for government? We have not had wages reform in Grenada since the 1980s. At some point in time, wage reform has to come to the table. And not just the union workers and government, but all workers in Grenada.
Well, the person is correct about wage reform. Yeah, there have not been a wage reform, but there have been in place for a while now what they call a pay and grade sort of thing, where wages should be increased based on productivity.
Right.
There's the whole public sector productivity drive and so forth. What has been happening over the years is that these things have not been fully implemented because you need the same public servants to be doing the assessment of the juniors, because it's public servants who supervise public servants, not necessarily a minister.
Yeah.
And what you have is across the board signing of documents and grading people. And so when it comes to salary increase, those who really work hard and push hard should be the ones that get a higher rate, and those who have been slacking on the job should get very little or none at all. But you always have a across-the-board salary increase. So there have been salary increases over the years. There have been incremental payments over the years. There have been promotion of people. And because the middle managers, which is something we always discuss, you have the PS at the top, who is the administrator of every ministry. The ministers are just the policy makers who administrate and manage the PS is the public servants, the Public Service Commission. And there is where you have a little disconnect, because the people who actually pay is government. But government don't have that power to determine who gets promoted and who does not. The Public Service Commission, through its own structures, is who do that. So you have a little disconnect between the paymaster and the person who controls. And so the middle managers, the people that are supposed to ensure that there is productivity and there is advancement in the work, and so don't always do that. So you have across the board salary increase. Yes?
All right. Another comment reads,
and just to correct though, the person was saying that I say government wants to keep the wages down. I say most employers will prefer if the wages are down. I wasn't saying the government don't want to pay, but if you have a wage bill that far exceeds your income, you're in problem.
You're in problem.
Which is what has happened during 2008 and 2019, which led us to a structural adjustment program. You had $17 million having to be spent every month, more than what was collected. So your payment far outweigh your revenue, your expenditures were far higher. And who wants to be in that position? Once you're in that position, you have serious trouble. So that's the point I was making.
Right. Another comment says, you know something? The naysayers is needed, and they are doing their duties well. They are the guardrails for success. We need them. I remember saying sharpen believes on the devil gaining stone. I'm not sure I've ever heard that saying.
I've never heard it, but I guess the person is trying to make a point that we are not so familiar with, but somebody may understand it better than we do.
On the WhatsApp, someone is saying we have drifted away from the basic protocols of good faith in Grenada for some time now. People are more interested in commotion rather than common sense, communication, conversation, and compromise. Weakness is pretending you are winning a battle you know can't be won. Strength is waging a battle where both sides can stand in the middle for the best of the country and continuity for the purpose intended. And that is a very forceful statement.
Very forceful statement, and a lot of seize them, and conversation, communication, compromise.
Yes.
They're all needed at this time. Huh?
Absolutely.
They are all needed at this time.
Absolutely. Now, Mr. Bola, we are going to close off a little early. The conversation will close off a little early. For the people who had not had the opportunity to listen to the Prime Minister's speech, we are going to take some time to, and it's not early. I know
but you don't have a lot of time there, so we need to. We need to play that. We need to play that, and then to get on to
yes. So I just want to give you an opportunity to make your closing remarks, wish the Grenadian public a safe and prosperous Easter.
Well, I thank you, Ms. Duncan, and you did not indicate that to me at the start of the program, so I could not, guide myself as to my comments. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank all those who participated, all the callers who called, people for the different versions. Whether you agree or disagree with what we were saying, with how we analyze, and we did not get into the entire speech to do proper analysis, but just some bits and pieces, because those things take time when you try to break it down and to explain it. But for all who called, we appreciate those who sent your comments. Some of them we couldn't read. I saw a very short one that somebody sent when we were talking about the seniors and what government is doing for them. Someone was saying, they don't want you to do it, they want you to cut it off so you can pay the 4%, and these are the same people who then turn around and say government does nothing for the seniors of this country. And so there are a lot of comments that we don't always get the chance to read, but keep them coming, because we review them, we go back and we look at them, and they guide us here on the program to determine whether or not we are reaching the people the way we want to, whether people are agreeing or disagreeing with them. And we are not afraid if you disagree, and we're not saying you should agree with everything, because sometimes we may make points and it is based on our version of what we see, what we understand, and how we view things. You may have a different perspective, and of course it is those kind of as someone say, communication and conversation and compromise from one end to the next that avoid confrontation, and we don't want confrontation. We always want good, sensible conversation. So thank you, everyone. We are heading into a pretty long weekend. I just want people to remember, while you might have a little fun, while you may want to have some family gathering or in your community do something, whatever it is you're getting at, please remember, we're still very, very much in a pandemic. There's still a chance that things can go bad. So let's be careful. Whatever you do, wherever you go, whatever activity you're going to participate in, please follow the protocols. Walk with your mask. Have your hand sanitizers. Wash and sanitize as regular as you can. Keep your distance. Wear your mask. Encourage your friends and family members to do the same, because all it takes, it's just one individual whom we have not suspected, one individual who appears to be healthy, because they are what they call asymptomatic persons. We have found that the new variant is already here, because I think the one person that we have in quarantine at the moment as a positive case, when the results were sent to CAFA, they confirmed that it was the British strain, which is much more severe than what we have known. So my appeal is not that you should not have a little time for fun and enjoyment, and so we have Friday until Monday, 4 long days. Take time to think. Yeah. Be careful with what you do. Life is more than for one day. Life continues when the party is over. Yep. You will have to continue to fend for yourself and your family long after the Easter weekend. So don't allow one moment of pleasure, one day of joy, fun, and laughter to keep you in pain, sorrow, and suffering for the rest of your life, and to drag your family members and friends, loved ones into that kind of pain and suffering. Be sensitive, act sensible, and let us remember this country belongs to every single one of us. So we must share in its pride and joy, and we must all plan and prepare to do the task that is ahead of us. Have an enjoyable Easter holiday, everyone, and take care, because we need to be talking to you after the holiday is over.
All right, guys, and we've come to the end of our program for today. And as we say here every day, in whatever you do and whatever you say, be safe and be secure. We always want to be talking with you, and we don't ever want to be talking about you. It's going to be a long Easter weekend. Remember to follow the protocols. Don't gather in too much large crowds, and be safe, everybody. It's been a pleasure being here with you. So stay tuned for the repeat of the Prime Minister's address, followed by the national report. Have a wonderful weekend, guys.
The following is a national address by Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell, Prime Minister and Minister for Public Administration, Home Affairs, National Security, Youth Development, Disaster Management and ICT.
Fellow Grenadians, as we come to the end of March 2021, it is important for us to take stock of the challenges and successes of the past year, most of which we have spent dealing with the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. When the decision was made to implement a national lockdown to protect our borders and our people, no one could have envisaged that a year later we would still be wearing masks and having to adhere to the various recommended protocols. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a long, unprecedented, and almost immeasurable impact on the entire world, from its unimaginable health and psychosocial implications to the reversal of economic growth worldwide. Here in Grenada, we must acknowledge how fortunate we are not to have faced so far a true health crisis on the scale that some of our closest neighbors are now grappling with. Sadly, though, the fact that we have managed so well has created a sense of complacency among some of our people, a situation that can have dire consequences for the entire population. The latest daily COVID-19 dashboard produced by the Ministry of Health shows that we currently have one active case, which is import related. Nevertheless, there is still cause for concern, since it has been identified as a UK variant, which health experts say is deadlier and more transmissible. Sisters and brothers, with the exception of December 2020 cluster, we have been consistently able to identify COVID-19 cases among arriving travelers due to our stringent entry protocols, and that speaks volumes for the efficacy of that approach. Through the continued dedication of our frontline workers, we will maintain that approach to safeguard the people of this country. Government, through initiatives led by the Ministry of Health, the COVID Subcommittee, and the Cabinet, will continue to spearhead the fight against COVID-19. But we must acknowledge our individual responsibility to protect ourselves and each other. This is not the time to engage in actions that can jeopardize public health and undermine all the successes recorded in the management of this pandemic locally. We have come too far for that. Too many of our fellow men and women have had to cope with the harsh impact of the pandemic for us to do anything that would prolong this period of suffering. My friends, sisters, and brothers all, our country has been highly recognized at the regional and international levels for its astute management of the health crisis. Just recently, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention ranked Grenada at its lowest travel risk rating, level 1, making it one of the few countries in the Caribbean to have that ranking. However, we cannot rest on our laurels. We must continue to maintain the recommended protocols. And all of us as citizens of this country have an important role to play in this regard. All of us, from captain down to cook. As Prime Minister, I am particularly aware of this responsibility, and I try my best to lead by example. I try to abide by the laws and by consistently adhering to the recommended protocols. Though it is difficult, and contrary to my love for people and my usual social interactions, I have adjusted my lifestyle to refrain from large social gatherings. This in itself is painful for me. But we must all recognize the need for personal sacrifices as part of this ongoing fight against COVID-19. The sacrifices we make now, sisters and brothers, will help to ensure that our country is not sidelined on the path to recovery. In other words, sisters and brothers, we should be prepared to make the sacrifices today that will ensure a safer tomorrow. I encourage one and all to do their part in this ongoing fight. I therefore call on the church and community leaders, trade union leaders, business leaders, all influential persons in our society, that we have a duty and a responsibility to lead by example and to encourage appropriate actions among those who look to us for guidance. Let us do the right thing for our people and for our country. Let us safeguard our future amidst the many uncertainties in the current global environment. Sisters and brothers, the successes recorded as a country are only possible because of our collective commitment as a people to following the recommended protocols. We must continue to work together to keep our country, ourselves, and our fellow brothers and sisters safe. This pandemic must be at the center of all that we do. We should not conveniently separate our actions or a specific cause from its potential impact as far as this health crisis is concerned. We must remain mindful that although a COVID-19 management plan has been relatively successful, all it takes is for a few or even one undetected case to create far-reaching consequences for our society. Just this week, the Commissioner of Police confirmed the rise in the number of illegal immigrants detected in Grenada. This is quite alarming, particularly when we consider the potential health implications. Therefore, safety must be our number one priority at all times. My friends, as leader of this country and as a citizen, it pains me to see that some of our teachers and the leadership of the Grenada Union of Teachers feel the need to engage in protest action in the middle of a global health crisis, and particularly so during a state of emergency, and breaking the laws of the land while doing so. Government has repeatedly reaffirmed that the 4% increase is rightly due to public officers. But what we are saying is that we cannot afford to pay now. Let us stop for a minute and reflect. Remember, this is the same government that in the past contract cycles has negotiated in good faith, pushing for timely agreement with trade unions so that the public officers can receive their increases on time and not long after they were due. This is the same government that concluded negotiations with the trade unions in November 2019, agreeing to a 4% hike for each year for the period 2020, 2021, and 2022. Promptly started the payments also in January 2020, and continue to pay the increases throughout 2020 every month, despite the sharp decline in revenue for most of the year. This is the same government that paid all public officers their salaries and allowances in full and on time during the early stages of the pandemic, when most public officers, including teachers, were at home. However, the inescapable reality now is that a significant shortfall in revenue caused by the pandemic has necessitated tighter controls on government's expenditure on recurrent budget items such as wages and salaries. By the same token, it is true that government has incurred significant additional expenses in recent months, some brought about by the fallout from the pandemic and the need to provide support to various sectors of the economy, and some, such as the repurchasing of the Grenada shares, which was necessitated by an arbitration ruling that required action within a stipulated time, failing which the entire country, your country, could have been adversely affected. Did you know that failure to honor the arbitration ruling could have led to action being taken to put a hold on all government monies, no matter where they are? Had this happened and allowed to happen, government services and spending would have been disrupted. Even the monthly payment of salaries to public officers. It was the decisive action of the government to repurchase the shares that avoided this possible interruption in its operations. Sisters and brothers, fellow Grenadians, what must be understood here is the distinct difference between recurrent and capital expenditure. Recurrent or continuing expenditure includes wages and utility bills, which are paid from revenue generated within the current fiscal year. The capital side of the budget provides for expenditure on development projects, asset acquisition, or other such initiative that represents an investment and fosters serious development. The responsible fiscal management policies adopted and maintained by this government prevents us from using money allocated in the annual budget for capital expenditure on recurrent expenses. Failure to abide by this will jeopardize millions of dollars in additional funding that Grenada can receive from donor agencies and development partners. In 2020, friends, Grenada benefited from $133 million in financing support and debt relief from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, G20, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. So far this year, we have been able to attract $78 million in external support. These sums have helped to facilitate the additional spending government has incurred in providing relief to some sectors, purchasing the necessary protective gear for frontline workers, investing in the educational infrastructure to ensure our young people are not left behind, and creating a safer environment in schools, among other areas. Expenditure continues to exceed revenue collection. Therefore, government must continue to aggressively mobilize additional resources to meet expenditure demands in 2021. I ask this: are we willing to sacrifice the desires of a few when the future of the entire population is at stake? The reality of our current fiscal situation is this: the financial implications of the pandemic caused a revenue shortfall of $96.6 million in 2020. Just think about that. With revenue collection in some months decreasing by as much as 50% when compared to the same period in 2019. Although the economy is slowly recovering, revenue collection is still below projected numbers and far lower than what was generated in 2019, when the agreement with the trade unions was signed, and this must be noted. Statistics from the Ministry of Finance show a continued variation in revenue collection. In January and February this year, government collected $30.1 million less than it did in the same period in 2020. However, we are optimistic about the continued recovery. But the fact remains that the revenue shortfall considerably affects the money that is available for recurrent expenditure. For the avoidance of doubt, this revenue, collected monthly, is a source of funds for the wages and salaries of public officers. The overriding message, therefore, here is that we must, at all costs, protect the future of this country. Any actions that undermine the economic stability we have sacrificed long and hard to achieve since 2013 would nullify those very sacrifices and jeopardize the future of this country and our children and grandchildren. Sisters and brothers, what must be pointed out as well is that the projection for growth in 2021 is 6%. But this will not take us back to the pre-COVID levels of real growth. In 2020, the country experienced negative growth of 12.2%. The reality is, it will take 2 to 3 years for our GDP to recover from that significant level of output loss experienced in 2020. That said, we remain guardedly optimistic that the recovery process will continue and the rate of recovery will improve. Therefore, tonight, I say to you all in honesty, and here I speak specifically to public officers, there is no question of if government will pay the 4% increase. Our track record in this regard speaks for itself. It is rather interesting that some of the same individuals who are calling on government to pay the 4% now did nothing to advance the cause of public officers when they had the opportunity to do so between 2008 and 2013. That aside, my message to all public officers is this: you are entitled to your increase. You will be paid your increase. But let us all be realistic. Thousands of your sisters and brothers forced into unemployment by the pandemic and are left without an income are also looking to government for much needed help to survive this serious crisis. Your elderly relatives, our treasured senior citizens, still require help buying medication and other basic amenities. Your sons and daughters still rely on government scholarship and educational help to continue their quest for higher education. Public officers, we recognize and appreciate your many sacrifices. You represent the backbone of government's operations. But at the same time, this is a government for all people. We take seriously our responsibility to look after the needs of all our people. Should we ignore the needs of the thousands of taxi drivers, vendors, hotel workers, and others whose livelihoods are linked to the tourism sector? Should we ignore the desperate needs of the road workers who, for 3 months into the year, have not yet earned a single dollar? Should we allow the international airport to close, removing one of the sources of government revenue, eliminating a critical export avenue for fishers and farmers, and cutting off our link to the world? Any responsible, conscientious government will find a way to balance its many responsibilities. And that is exactly what this government is doing. Trying to ensure that none of our citizens are disenfranchised while we safeguard the future of our beloved land, notwithstanding the current challenges. My dear sisters and brothers all, I am confident that we will get past this. Life will regain a sense of normalcy. Livelihoods endangered by the pandemic will restart, and our economy will resume its trajectory of growth. The signs are there. The St. George's University, which represents about 25% of our GDP, is looking to resume on-campus operations later this year. This by itself will have a positive domino effect on the various sectors of our economy, including those for the farmers, fishers, supermarkets, and the general retail sector, as well as accommodation sectors. The St. George's University is currently engaged in several expansion and redevelopment projects as it continues to play a key role in meeting increased global demand for physicians and healthcare personnel. Additionally, several hotels are on course to reopen in the coming months. In fact, Sandals Grenada resumed operations today, with close to 400 of its staff back on the job. Government continues to invest heavily in its public sector investment also, creating hundreds of jobs and spurring serious economic development in our country. Similarly, there continues to be a significant level of investor confidence in the local economy, manifested through the several construction projects which are underway and which are also creating tremendous job opportunities for all our people. 1 year after Grenada recorded its first COVID-19 case, the big question is, how do we get past this stumbling block? How do we begin to recover from the devastating impact of a pandemic that is still unfolding? How do we reactivate our economy? How do we get our people back to work? How do we resume the level of social activities that is so much a part of the Grenadian tradition? How do we lighten government's load and enable it to honor its outstanding commitment to public officers? Multiple questions, legitimate questions, all pointing to a single solution. To successfully get to the post-COVID-19 chapter, we must get vaccinated. The experts call it herd immunity, and it is only by getting a significant portion of our population vaccinated that we will be able to achieve it. I have done my part the best I can. I've already received my first dose of the vaccine. In another few weeks, based on the revised guidance from the World Health Organization, WHO, on the timing of the second doses, I'll receive the second dose. Vaccination holds the key to any possible return to life as we knew it. If we fail to get on board, we run the risk of being left behind as the rest of the world goes back to normal. Some countries are already identifying vaccination as an entry requirement for all visitors. Some airlines are making vaccination mandatory for travelers, and as the cruise industry prepares to set sail again, some cruise lines are already outlining vaccination requirements for both passengers and crew. Therefore, as our entertainers prepare to resume international appearances, and as our cruise ship workers prepare to head back to work, they will all have to be vaccinated. And for those who engage in travel for leisure or for even medical purposes, you will face similar requirements. Therefore, you ought to start making preparations by getting vaccinated today. Here in Grenada, to help protect our frontline workers, all accommodation facilities providing quarantine for inbound travelers will be required to have all their staff vaccinated soon. A few short months ago, we saw how rapidly the case numbers rose when employees at one hotel contracted the disease. With deadlier variants of the coronavirus now in circulation around the world, we must take all the necessary measures to protect our people and at the same time allow them to continue their livelihoods. I therefore encourage everyone who meets the eligibility criteria to get vaccinated. Despite the heavy global demand for COVID-19 vaccines, government has obtained 23,000 doses of AstraZeneca, a good start as we seek to vaccinate at least 60% of the adult population. My friends, my sisters and brothers all, in closing, I urge you to protect yourselves, protect your loved ones, protect your neighbors, and protect your country. We are all in this together. Therefore, we must all work together to safeguard our people, our country, and our future. And as we approach the holiday weekend, I wish everyone a happy Easter. And as you partake in activities to celebrate this serious religious observance, remember to adhere to the recommended protocols. Wear your mask. Wash your hands or sanitize frequently. And do not engage in large social gatherings. Stay safe, my brothers and sisters. I thank you.
The preceding was a national address by